Welcome to the Regeneration International podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is a panel discussion on the current status of organic dairy. We are going to quickly introduce the panelists and then set the stage for a conversation this morning. So we have with us today Ed Maltby, the Executive Director of the Northeast Organic Dairy Producers Alliance. We have Jill Smith, the Executive Director of the Western Organic Dairy Producers Alliance, WADPA. We have Brad Santi, an organic dairy farmer from Maine, who recently lost his contract with Horizon Organic Milk, and Jennifer Beretta, the WADPA Board President and a California organic dairy farmer. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name's Kate Mendenhall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Organic Farmers Association. We represent certified organic farmers nationwide. It's my pleasure to facilitate this panel today. So part of the reason that we are meeting on this topic today is that recently 89 organic dairy farmers lost their milk contracts with Danone North America, owner of Horizon Organic Milk. This mass exodus from the Northeast affects farmers in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. Ed, could you please give us a short overview of what has happened and why in the Northeast?
Yes, thank you, Kate. When Danone purchased Horizon Organic as part of their purchase of the larger White Wave consolidated company, they knew from the start that there was a dedicated supply of organic milk in the Northeast, because that was one of the conditions around the Justice Department deciding that there was potential for a monopoly on the supply side. Over the last 2 or 3 years, Danone has slowly allowed various farmers to leave, haven't replaced contracts. And over a month ago now, they announced very indirectly with letters to farmers that their contracts would be cancelled. They have a 1-year extension to August 2022. And the reason they gave was that the trucking cost of trucking milk to their dedicated plant in Buffalo, New York, on the far western side of New York, was too expensive. They did not announce beforehand or did not work with the farming community, organic dairy farming community, in looking at various alternatives. It's just a letter to producers saying you're cancelled, your contract has ended. This is particularly significant right now because the organic dairy farmers have no other buyers for their milk. We're just coming into finishing an oversupply situation where the other buyers have their farmers on quotas. So the demand for organic milk, especially in the higher cost area of New York and New England, is not in demand. It's cheaper to get the milk from the Midwest, where there are larger dairies and they have the economies of scale. So what we're facing now is a situation where the farms do not have any alternative buyers, where there is very little opportunity to have their milk processed by other companies, and a lack of infrastructure in the Northeast for processing and packaging of especially organic dairy milk.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Brad, could you share with us a little bit about how this has affected your farm and your neighbors?
Mostly it's just we're not looking for extending debt or anything. State's done a lot. They have a working group that's working on it. Seems to be that there's some things going to come into play in the next few months. There's hope. Not as much panic as there was a month, 6 weeks ago. So that seems to be good. I think we'll have some answers here in the next few months. I had a talk with a guy higher up in Horizon just Friday. He called to make sure that everything was going good and if there was anything they could do to help with the situation.
That's good to hear. How long have you been selling milk to Horizon?
Almost 13 years.
They've been in the region for a long time, correct?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Jill, could you share with us a little bit how this mass exodus from the Northeast has affected producers in the Western US states? And has this happened in your region before?
Sure. Thank you, Kate. We have lost a lot of dairies out in the Western US over the past several years, often entire regions at a time, much like this situation. And we too have very few options for where we can ship our milk. There are some producers that find homes for their milk, but it may be with a handler that there's no contract with that. It's just a home for their milk. So it's not a very stable situation. And then we see others that, are just in a position where they feel like they're better to shut their dairies down, which is heartbreaking because a lot of these are the pioneers of the organic dairy industry, much like the Northeast region. They really built the organic milk industry and created that trust and integrity behind the seal. So, and then we also have producers out here that are faced with drought, are faced with extreme feed prices, and we don't see the price for organic milk keeping up with that. It's remained at a relatively unstable price point. So, you don't know what your future looks like as a business. And again, it's that lack of infrastructure, that consolidation. There are just fewer and fewer homes for organic milk.
Thank you, Jill.
Sure.
Jennifer, could you please add to that from your farm perspective? How has this trend affected your farm and your neighbors?
So this trend actually started about 5 years ago. Our farm was one of 8 in the Sonoma County, Marin County region that was dropped by the Danone Horizon company. We used to ship to Wallaby Yogurt, and Wallaby sold to White Wave. And then when White Wave sold to Danone, and I knew right away the Horizon milk thing was going to be bad. I'll be very honest about that. And when then White Wave sold to Danone is when we got our notice that in 9 months our contract would not be renewed. So 4 years ago, we were very fortunate to ship a load of milk to our new creamery, Clover Sonoma, but we were one of 2 that got picked up, and there was 6 others that you felt heartbroken for where they were going to ship their milk. They got picked up by a what we call a handler, and they still are shipping milk today, thank goodness. But the West was kind of the first of the Horizon Danone disaster, I call it. They moved from Sonoma County up to the Ferndale area, went to Oregon and Washington, and now they've gone to the Northeast. So for us, it's been really hard to watch this happen because I know what it feels like. When it comes to what happens now is, they're going to bigger farms, cheaper milk. What does that do for the smaller farm? That was what organic was meant for. Our dairy wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for organic. We're very pasture-based. We were able to move out of conventional 14 years ago, go organic. And now I feel like that organic mold is different. It's bigger dairies, cheap milk, and that's not what it was supposed to be like. So for us, we just hope every day that our company continues to pick up our milk, and we hope that the guys in the Northeast find a home. And we hope that this doesn't draw down the market price even more by Danone Horizon, finding bigger dairies and cheaper milk.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'd like to just spend a little bit more time on the point that Jennifer brought up. And Brad, I was hoping you could explain a little bit from the Northeast, and then I'll come back to you, Jennifer. What are some of the differences from these family farms that are being dropped from Horizon from some of the larger farms? Because I don't think that Horizon is reducing the amount of milk that they're selling, but they're buying from different buyers. So what are the different contributions to the environment and the communities that these family farms are making?
Around here, like it's all 50 to less than 100 cow dairies, tie stall or freestall. There's not a lot of big farms around us that are organic. So once you go bigger, it's a larger footprint and everything. I don't know.
And how does that, I mean, if you weren't farming organically, would you be in the conventional system? What are the sort of other impacts to clean water and habitat creation that you're contributing to with your small organic dairy?
Well, with pasture-based, instead of having cows confined, more roaming, natural habitat for the cows, compared to just large free stalls where milk companies just want to back up and grab a tanker of milk. Now they don't want to stop for 4,000 or 5,000 pounds.
All right, thank you. And Jennifer, could you outline a little bit about what the Western organic dairy farms look like compared to some of the larger organic CAFO farms that some of the larger companies are starting to rely more on? What are some of the environmental services that farms like yours are providing?
So I'll just give the example of the 8 in our area that were dropped. So that was 8 family farms, probably totaled about 2,500 cows, which the dairy they kept on in California totaled 2,500 cows. So you just dropped 8 families with employees that gave back to the community, that gave back to the economy. You look at what we did on a standpoint of pasture-based. For us, we're applying for NRCS dollars and, carbon footprint and all that. So these bigger dairies, their footprint may be a little bit bigger. They're still probably following all of the water quality rules and whatnot, at least here in California. But when you look at it in a sense of how many families no longer potentially will be shipping milk, what that does to the economy, what that does to the employees, that's more people out of work. And then you think of, well, that's just cheap milk. That's not the organic model. Like I said, we went organic because we were pasture-based. To me, a 2,500 cow dairy does not meet the organic rules that are set in place for us when it comes to pasture, how far they have to walk, how many days out on pasture and their dry matter. So it's things that for us as a dairy farmer, we look at, well, how does that 2,500 cow dairy meet the rules when I know what it's like for me at 300 cows and 400 acres just to meet the pasture rule is.
Thank you, Jennifer. I want to move on to our next question and start with you, Ed. What are some possible solutions for the organic community to consider? You mentioned some of the infrastructure problems and some of the policy issues. Could you highlight some solutions?
Yes, and looking from a Northeast point of view, and it's from what the others have said, it's similar across the country. One of the biggest issues is infrastructure, and most organic dairy packaged milk is now ultra pasteurized, and so there are a lot of smaller dairies, smaller processors that have closed down because they cannot meet those standards and have not got the capital investment to bring their dairies up into compliance with the ultra pasteurization, which effectively extends the shelf life which the large supermarkets need for their warehousing. In the Northeast, we have formed a regional task force, which is looking at various opportunities for direct marketing, for taking full advantage of the local community, but we're coming up against the requirement for processing, and that's why again we've extended to look at different initiatives from different investors and looking to a longer term future when we can have dedicated processing facilities that can handle the smaller amounts of organic milk that can be sold locally, that can be used in value-added products, that can be fed directly into the local community, and so the consumer then can have a dedicated supply that they know comes from local farmers who support the community. And we have a very active consumer base in the Northeast. So it seems an ideal situation to try and combine those two things. And it'll obviously take some time, which is why the OFA launched that petition to ask Danone to extend the contracts, and also to consider giving some sort of severance package to those farms that they are effectively laying off, some of whom have been with the Horizon brand for 20 years. So they're the two of the initiatives that we are looking at in the Northeast.
Thank you. And Jill, what are you seeing as some possible solutions for the organic community to consider in the Western states?
Well, one, I think as a whole, the broader organic dairy community, we're working to come together and stand by each other. So I think that's really important. And I think that helps if we stand together when we're looking at the contracts that are offered to producers and as we negotiate those contracts. And again, I think there's some infrastructure we can put in place, much as Ed said. Maybe there are transfer stations where a region ships to a transfer station and a processor or a handler can take it from there. I think we can help our consumers understand where their milk comes from, and supporting these regional models that are out there, and let them know that they are voting with their dollars out there, right? If they want to see change brought about, or they want to support local family farmers, use your dollars to vote for what we're doing and the practices that you feel good about.
Great, thank you, Jill. And Brad, do you have anything to add?
I guess what they're saying is it's got to get back to the consumer that this is what they want, is pasture-based. And by losing these 89 farms, that's what they're potentially losing. So we're trying to do a marketing campaign for that and get directly to the consumer instead.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, great point. Consumers have always been so important in partnering with farmers to grow the organic movement and keep the principles of organic at the center. That's a really great point. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
I definitely think, just making sure the consumers understand where their milk comes from. That's a big one we see here. It's not about, you have the activists that don't like dairy. Honestly, most people just want to know where their milk comes from and that it's done right and followed the rules. So definitely making sure that we push home that the creameries and the dairies that are doing it right, and to buy their products and to support those dairies and those areas. I think that's the biggest one, really. And then two, making sure that things are getting through Congress. The people we vote for are the ones that are hopefully going to be on our side when it comes to some of these bigger rules. So they also have a play in that too, of who they're voting for and who they're supporting and how they're going to support our industry in DC and at state level.
Thank you. And Organic Farmers Association, in connection with NADPA and WADPA and regional groups in the Northeast, have a petition that we encourage folks to sign on to, that not only puts pressure on Danone to come back to the Northeast and find a solution, but also keeps you in the loop for future action to tell Danone that we want to be buying organic milk from family farms that are based in pasture and grass and the best organic principles. So I'd like to move now to what are some policy protections that would help prevent this, and what can consumers do in addition? So Ed Maltby, I'll start with you.
Yes, there's two issues working their way through the regulatory side of the USDA, the National Organic Program, which certifies organic in the US and internationally, is putting together regulation that will clarify how conventional dairy cows can be transitioned to organic production, and to ensure that that clarification is implemented by every certifier across the country. At this point, different certifiers have different ways of implementing the existing regulation. We're looking to USDA to publish a final rule after nearly 10 years of working with them to get the clarification that is required in order to make the give the certifiers the power legally to issue non-compliances when they see that the transition isn't happening correctly. And this one-time transition exemption was originally put in the Organic Food Production Act in 1990 to ensure that conventional dairies would be able to transition their existing herds into organic without losing the long-term genetics, the long-term herd immunities. But after that one-time transition, then everything else had to be bred either on the farm or ensure that it was organic from the last third of gestation. So that essentially means that it had to come from an organic cow that was under organic production, and the calf then would be reared organically. What has happened in the last 10 years is that some certifiers have allowed continuous transition of conventional animals into large organic herds. And this culminated in 2016 when demand for organic milk increased, and some of those larger herds then transitioned a large number of conventional animals into their organic herd, and we ended up with a surplus over the whole country. That surplus caused a 25 to 30% drop in the price that farmers get for their milk, and a lot of farmers had to leave the industry because they couldn't survive at that price, and because the buyers no longer wanted their product. And the major buyers, the two major buyers, Organic Valley and Horizon Organic, then put quotas on the farmers as to how much they could produce. We're now slowly reaching a point where that surplus is disappearing, but we need to ensure that USDA publishes a final rule quickly. It's working its way through the USDA process, but we need consumers to keep talking with their representatives and their senators to ensure that pressure is continuously exerted at the USDA level. So again, it doesn't get lost in the busy work that every agency has these days. Without this final rule, which legally lays down the language of how conventional animals are transitioned to organic, then if we don't get that in place and we reach another situation where there is an increase in demand for organic milk, then we'll be in a situation that, again, we'll have a surplus, a drop in pay price, a drop in the number of farmers that can survive. So consumers should continue to talk to their representatives and their states, their senators, to ensure that there is pressure on USDA to complete this final rule.
Thank you, Ed. That's so important. So consumers can call their local representative and their two senators and ask them to tell the USDA to finalize the origin of livestock rule as soon as possible. That's a really important message. Jill, what do you have to add? What are some other policy protections that would help prevent this, and maybe other things that consumers can do to support family organic dairy farms?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I'll second Ed in that we do need policy improvements or strengthening of some of these organic standards. And I'd like to point out that the majority of us organic producers are doing it the right way. We really are. And we're taking a holistic approach when we look at our farms and the system that we're creating. And so I'll second Ed too. We need consistency with our certifiers, no matter your size, scope, scale. We need pasture enforcement. People need to be following those guidelines. And I think another important piece is that we need to recognize that organic producers are part of climate change mitigation, and people can look to us as models as we continue down this path. And as we discuss it more and more, we're models, and we can be out there showing people what works and what doesn't. And there's a lot of value to that. I think in this specific situation too, consumers can let their expectations of what a B Corp really should be, they can be heard on that front. And I think just a couple of other things is that we can look to our retailers too, as we see the growth in private label dairy products. We can look to our retailers and ask them to really research where this milk is coming from and what they're supporting and what they're relaying to their consumers, because consumers do rely on them to do the research. And then I would also challenge consumers to really look out there and support regional or local products that are in the marketplace. They oftentimes don't get the same shelf space in grocery stores or have to sell through other routes. And so, just look around and see what's out there. And usually these regional farms, mine, for instance, we're very transparent. We let you come out and see the cows, see the grass, that sort of thing. So you really do know who you're supporting and that you share the same values as your dairy producer. So, but I second that we really do need stronger enforcement as well of our rules.
That's great, Jill. Thank you. It's nice to have some concrete things you can do when you go to the store, looking for other more local organic milk labels, and taking that first stance with your dollar and putting policy pressure on, and also telling your grocery stores, please buy from these local farms. They're doing things right. So those are great points. Brad, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with we just need policy to be in effect. Can't have from one state to the West Coast or whatever. It just needs to be straight across, like organic was meant for.
Yeah, I imagine it's very frustrating when you're held to a very high standard on your farm and you see other farms somehow getting that precious organic certified label without holding to the same pasture standards.
Yeah.
And like Jill said, so many farms are doing it so well and right, and holding up the organic principles, and often going far beyond what organic is requiring. Jennifer, what else do you have to add?
I would just add too, the way that our certification is paid for. I feel like it's a fox holding the hen house. You pay on how much you make. So when there's a very large dairy paying a very large fee to our certifiers, sometimes I wonder, are they just not dinging them because of how much money they're brought in? So if there's a way that we can tweak how we're paying our certifier, I feel like myself, my dad, some of the dairies around us would feel a little bit more confident in the certification process. Definitely being, across the board, how our certifiers certify. I work with 3 different certifiers in our area. I help some dairies with their paperwork, and it's very different every certifier. And so how can we be almost the same, but a different company, and making sure that the rules are being followed the same? I would also just challenge the consumer, to really know where their milk is coming from. It's not about sometimes that animal humane label or the non-GMO label that the farmer, yes, we are doing that right, but look into what these companies are doing back for their farmers, just like we're seeing today. What has Horizon done for their farmers? Not drop them, but they need to be doing better for them. So, look for those labels like animal humane, non-GMO, but also do the research on how these companies treat their farmers. Because at the end of the day, how we're treated is how we're going to get our milk to the shelf as well. And if it definitely buy local, and support local. If there's a new creamery that's being started up or a value added, make sure you go support those farmers and see what they're doing. There's a reason they're doing it, and they're going to be doing it right.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. All right, our final question. What should organic farmers think about for the future? We'll start again the same order, Ed.
The critical factor is to work together. As everybody's been saying, we have the same problems across the country. And although the size of the farm may be different and the type of farming may be different, we all need to work together to leverage what we have, which is the human capital, the dedication to farming with nature instead of against it, and the strength of the family unit in farming to improve the environment, to ensure that we have a very high quality product that is produced without the use of herbicides, pesticides, and can talk directly to the consumer with the strong confidence that what we're telling them is the truth. It's not just some marketing campaign that is used by some large multinational conglomerate. It is the truth. We are producing organic milk following all the regulations across the country, and we're producing it to benefit ourselves and the community.
Thank you, Ed. Jill, what should organic farmers think about for the future?
Well, again, I'll second Ed and say that it's essential that we work together. We have to stand together because, you know, this region is going through it right now, but there'll be another one just down the road, you know, here that we'll see go through it. It's going to continue to happen. But I think we need to stand united and continue the work that we are doing, because I think we're all doing it because we think it's the right thing to do for the land, the animals, the environment, and be transparent about what we're doing. Because going back to the farmer, I think sometimes, you know, the farmer does get villainized these days. And, you know, you either have a love for cows and dairy or you wouldn't keep doing it. You know, I mean, it's a choice because your entire family is impacted. And I think taking it further with working together, we can find efficiencies if we work together. We can negotiate contracts if we work together. We can stand tall for higher standards if we stick together. And, you know, even find efficiencies if we share our resources and are working toward a common goal. But I think every dairy producer has to be prepared for this being a possibility for themselves. It's easy to say, oh, these are small dairies, you know, and they don't have as many cows maybe, but at the same time, you know, that list gets shorter and shorter, and you know, it's likely to impact all of us, or in Jen's case, they've been through it on multiple levels. So it's something you have to be concerned about as a dairy producer, and really try to look at your operation and make it as sustainable and stable as possible to weather these storms.
Thank you. Brad, what would you have to offer to add to that? What should organic farmers think about for the future?
Or get directly to the consumer. I've had more consumers that don't know the difference between organic milk and conventional. And we're an okay farming community around here, and people still don't understand the difference. We could all stand together no matter if we're conventional, but there's not a lot of us left anymore, and just it's got to be passed down to the next generation. And there's less and less of them that even want to do it. So trying to just get people to understand what we do every day.
Thank you, Brad. And Jennifer, what would you like to add?
I think to Jill's point, to know that just to be very prepared that it could happen to you any moment, no matter what size you are, no matter what creamer you are. I never thought that Wallaby would ever have sold. It was a family thing that he sold, and then to have sold and be dropped from a company that, I mean, Jerry, the owner, used to sit in our kitchen and bring us yogurt. And so, you know, we never thought that that day would happen. And I don't think anybody thinks that day is going to happen, but be very prepared. Always have your guides up and, you know, see what's around you. We're very fortunate in our area. We have a couple creameries that if maybe Clover decided to drop us today, we could go ask, but the guarantee of us getting picked up is still not there. Also to think of maybe that value added on your farm, and maybe it's not about milk, but maybe you're, you know, shipping milk somewhere, but you have a U-pick, or getting the consumer out there to show you what you're doing, and then have something else for them to also do. Maybe it's flowers, strawberries, I don't know, but just getting that consumer on farm to see what you're doing, to see the organic model, and then to everybody else's point, to make sure we're all standing together in this. That's really important for us all to be on the same page and fight for each other, no matter what creamery you ship to.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I just want to remind our audience that the U.S. Department of Agriculture did not start the organic label. They did not start the organic market. Organic was started by organic farmers and consumers together. And so it really is our label, it's our food, and we need to continue to work together to protect it, to keep our farmers viable, to grow organic farmers across this country so that we can continue to get local healthy food and improve our own community's food security, our own environmental protections, clean water, clean air, and to sustain these family farms that are working so hard to grow healthy food for all of us. So it's really important farmers and consumers continue to work together. This is one problem here, and we need to work on this now, but we also need to be conscientious about the quality of the organic market and put pressure on the government to keep it emulating the values that started it in the first place. So with that, I'll just move to any closing statements that anyone would like to make before we sign off. Ed?
No, just to thank the consumers of the world for continuing to purchase organically certified products, and to work with farmers to ensure that we, as Kate has said and others have said, that we can keep the standards high, and that the farmers reap some of the benefits financially of being able to sell their products organically.
Thank you. Jill?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming together just to talk about this and address this, because that hasn't always happened in the past. You know, farmers haven't been able to speak about the situations they've been faced with. So I'm encouraged by everyone who's come together and really taken a look at this situation and tried to help these producers, even if it's just messaging their support. But again, we're thankful for the organic consumer. We're thankful for the farmers who are out there striving to be good stewards of the land and the animals. And just, you know, we're trying on so many levels to do a great thing here. And so if people would recognize that, and I guess maybe say thank you to your farmer. I'm not sure, but we do thank everyone for coming together and talking about these issues.
Thank you. Brad, I'll go to you. Any closing remarks?
I don't think so.
Thank you so much for being here today. I know this is a really trying time for you and the other Horizon farmers in the Northeast, and I just so appreciate you for having the courage to join us today and speak up. And we wish you the best and hope that you find a new market for your milk and continue to flourish your organic dairy and to pass it on to your children in the future. Jennifer, any closing remarks?
I just want to say thank you to the organic consumer. And I think that it's been a great thing to see, you know, the 5 of us sitting here collaborating on things and how to make things better. It gives me great hope that we can all work together as we move forward. And I just encourage every consumer to, you know, really know where their milk comes from. And yeah.
Thank you so much. To Ed, Jill, Brad, and Jennifer for giving your time today to share with you your experience and to help us better understand what's currently happening in the Northeast, but also for dairy farmers nationwide. I know that this audience really is committed to healthy organic food, so please continue to support these dairy farmers and work with us as a community to fix this immediate problem and then shape a new future that's more sustainable for family organic dairy farms that are doing such a great job on their farms. Thank you so much for joining us today.